they're calling it basically a summit to create peace. And so Trump has pulled everybody together in the name of bringing calm to the region, in the name of bringing peace to the region. And I think that is important in and of itself. In other words, it's not just the Europeans who wanted this war to end. It wasn't just the Egyptians who were hosting this. They wanted the war to end, or the Jordanians. But you're seeing people from Indonesia. You're seeing leaders from all over coming to this summit and acknowledging that it's time to build a different future. And that really, to me, feels like the most important thing, that we've had 2 years. I think it really, it sparked fear in the hearts of a lot of these leaders. They did not want to see the region descend into the hellscape that it became. And right now they're starting to think again about the idea of, well, is it really worth drawing Israel into battle? Is it really worth testing whether the United States is going to come to Israel's assistance? We saw what happened. Iran paid an enormous price back in June. So maybe this is a sign that the Middle East, after having been a basket case for decades now, maybe centuries, maybe they're going to start to think twice about all of it.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Jonathan Schanzer is our guest. He is the perfect person for today. Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. You said to me just before we started rolling, it's an historic day, and it definitely feels big. What bothers me right now is I texted my kids and I said, "You're living on an historic day." And my daughter said, "Why?" And I thought, are they not talking about this in school right now? What's going on? From your vantage point, what makes today special? Hey, I want to take a quick second to remind you about my good friends at besthotgrill.com. Fortunately, we have them in our corner, and that allows us to provide you interviews like today. So besthotgrill.com. They also make the best gas logs for your fireplace. If you're still burning wood, or your old gas log is overdue for a makeover, Rasmussen Gas Logs has a new look for you. They have many finishes, including detailed bark, fresh and split, weathered driftwood, and white birch. For rooms with modern or contemporary design, don't use a rustic log set. Check out Rasmussen's popular fireballs to keep your fireplace's appearance in alignment with the room's decor. A fireplace is the focal point of every room, so you want a Rasmussen gas log set or fireball to look great when the fireplace is off, too, and even better when the flame is on. Get a free personalized log set sizing recommendation and more information about USA-made Rasmussen gas logs and Solaire infrared grills at besthotgrill.com. Besthotgrill.com. Give them a visit. American-made Rasmussen gas logs and Solaire infrared grills, USA-made, at besthotgrill.com. Besthotgrill.com. What makes today special?
Well, Michele, first of all, thanks for having me on. Really an honor to be with you. Look, there are a couple things that I would say are important right now. Number one is, the Middle East has been at war for 2 straight years, and this is a day of quiet. It's a day that potentially steers us toward peace. I think that's hugely important. This opens up the door. Secondly, it opens up the door for possible normalization agreements in the future between Israel and Saudi Arabia, Israel and Indonesia. And then after that, who knows? But I think, what we've done is we've steered our way back to a place where such a thing is possible. But I also think that it's important to note that our enemies, America's enemies across the Middle East, are taking note of this. Donald Trump flew to Israel's parliament, to the Knesset. He stood side by side with Israel's leaders, and he basically made it clear that Israel would prevail in any conflict as long as the United States had anything to say about it. And I got to say, I was thinking about this at the time that, Iran, they were watching, right? All of these different terrorist groups that had tried to plunge the region into war for 2 years, they're watching. They got to be frustrated today, and that makes me pretty happy.
I would imagine. Here's I want to get to all the good in this, but first the questions, because I think immediately people are going, okay, well, in exchange for the living and dead hostages, Israel gave back hundreds of Palestinians, many of whom were serving life sentences in Israel for terrorist crimes, etc. That seems a little tenuous to me. That spooks a lot of people. What do you make of that exchange? What happens now?
Look, I don't like it. And I got to say, I think this is the one area where the Israelis really need to rethink their policies. Let me put it this way. We've seen ISIS, for example, or Al Qaeda kidnap Americans. And the first thing that kidnap and ransom experts will tell the families is erase every mention of your loved one from the internet, remove their photos. Do not give the sense that these people are valuable. In other words, make the terrorists try to figure out what kind of value there is. And if they don't see any, well, maybe they'll actually stand down. In other words, the cost will not be as high. The Israelis did the exact opposite here, right? The families came out in force. Everybody across Israel, they were wearing yellow ribbons. They made this, they named this area right across from Israel's Defense Department. They call it Hostage Square, and there were thousands of people that were streaming in and out of there every day. That is not lowering the profile. And so, and this is actually part of a longstanding tradition in Israel. There was a soldier by the name of Gilad Shalit. He was kidnapped more than, 14 years ago already. They traded 1,000 prisoners just for him. Today, right, they just traded 2,000 prisoners. It was 1,700 regular fighters picked up on the battlefield from Gaza, plus 250 people serving life sentences, and they traded them for these 20 people. This is a pattern that I think we don't want. The Israelis have to rethink it. The United States would never do this. Most Western countries wouldn't. But I think, Donald Trump talked the Israelis into doing exactly this right now because it was time to end the war. It was time to try to steer the region back to some sense of calm. And so I understand why it happened today, but I think there are concerns about this pattern for the future.
As I understand it, let me make sure I have you right. What you would have recommended from the beginning was that these hostages take down the ribbons, take down the protests, stop showing up in this square, stop with the posters, take all photos off the internet of these people, make them seem less valuable. I can understand that. Do I have that right? Is that what you're saying, to sort of publicly devalue them so they don't hold as much of a weight with the captors?
This is what we do with individuals, right? Obviously, 250, plus hostages, that's a very different story, and it was a traumatic moment in Israel. Yeah. But I guess what concerned me, if I'm going to be honest, is, the families of these hostages who, let me just say, I've interviewed a bunch of them on my podcast. I feel absolutely horrible for, everything that they've gone through. But their voices amplified this. So much so that you get the sense that Hamas understood that the longer they kept them, the more they would get in return. And it incentivized them keeping them for 2 years as opposed to making a deal early. It was that kind of, they were inflicting psychological trauma on Israel, and they knew they were doing it, and it was an incentive to keep doing it. And that's sort of what I look back on these past 2 years. I was thinking, this deal could have been struck on October 8th of 2023, one day after the war, right? All the live hostages in return for an end of hostilities, right? Or maybe by 2024. We just didn't see that. And I think part of it was Hamas felt emboldened by the fact that they were inflicting trauma on Israel. And that was part of their goal.
Again, Jonathan Schanzer is the executive director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. You have such in-depth experience in this area with all of these Palestinian soldiers and Hamas, or just the people that you just described, the people serving life sentences, coming back to Palestine, coming back to Gaza. How much faith do you have that Hamas is actually going to disarm as is required in this 20-point agreement?
So that's really interesting. I got up this morning. I watched starting at 4 o'clock. such is my life. Middle East is on a different time zone than we are.
Yeah.
That's the job, right? And I watched Donald Trump walk into Israel's parliament, to the Knesset, and he got, all the journalists descended upon him today, and one of them asked exactly that. And Donald Trump said they're gonna dismantle themselves. They're gonna disarm. No hesitation, complete and total confidence in his own words. I will say that, Hamas has been around since 1988. Mm-hmm. They are not interested necessarily in just, voluntarily surrendering and disbanding. So what we're hearing right now is that they may try to rename themselves. They may try to call themselves something else other than Hamas, but still try to maintain a stranglehold over the Gaza Strip. I think what's interesting now is, of course, the Israelis are going to be tracking them. They've got excellent intelligence in terms of what's going on inside Gaza, what's happening on the ground there. And then pretty soon we're going to have some international forces come in. And now the question will be whether there's fighting there, where they're going to try to resist these new forces that come in.
There's so much left to happen, and we don't want to take away from the joy of today, of seeing these people reunited with their families. And they've got massive struggles ahead of them, whether they're psychological, physical, emotional, whatever it is. It's not over for them. They are home, but what they're facing for the rest of their lives is untold at this moment. So there is that joy, but there are a lot of questions. Now, from the Knesset, Trump left and flew to Egypt. And there's this summit of many, many countries. It's quite a visual to watch this happening. It's quite a statement to the rest of the world. I mean, you've got heads of countries there from all over the globe, Jonathan. What kind of impact will that have? After nearly 30 years on the sidelines, whether it was the NFL or the NBA or the Olympic Games, I've learned that true expertise comes from consistency, not guesswork. So that's why I've partnered with Sports Corner Daily. Their free daily picks keep hitting with analysis so sharp even casual fans can win. Now, the NFL season is well underway. There's no better time to jump in. Get 2 expert picks sent to you every single day, absolutely free. Let me repeat that. Get 2 expert picks sent to you every single day, absolutely free. Just head to sportsdailypick.com and sign up in seconds. No cost, no risk, just smart winning insights. Don't wait. Get into the season the right way. sportsdailypick.com. Sports Corner, where winners start their day. Again, visit sportsdailypick.com, sportsdailypick.com. It's quite a visual to watch this happening. It's quite a statement to the rest of the world. I mean, you've got heads of countries there from all over the globe, Jonathan. What kind of impact will that have?
Well, I mean, look, number one, you have people from all over the globe, as you just mentioned, a huge number of representatives from the Muslim world, from the Arab world. And, they're calling it basically a summit to create peace. And so Trump has pulled everybody together in the name of bringing calm to the region, in the name of bringing peace to the region. And I think that is important in and of itself. In other words, it's not just the Europeans who wanted this war to end. It wasn't just the Egyptians who were hosting this. They wanted the war to end, or the Jordanians. But you're seeing people from Indonesia. You're seeing leaders from all over coming to this summit and acknowledging that it's time to build a different future. And that really, to me, feels like the most important thing, that we've had 2 years. I think it really, it sparked fear in the hearts of a lot of these leaders. They did not want to see the region descend into the hellscape that it became. And right now they're starting to think again about the idea of, well, is it really worth drawing Israel into battle? Is it really worth testing whether the United States is going to come to Israel's assistance? We saw what happened. Iran paid an enormous price back in June. So maybe this is a sign that the Middle East, after having been a basket case for decades now, maybe centuries, maybe they're going to start to think twice about all of it.
Yeah, we know that the attack, Midnight Hammer, on Iran and those nuclear sites was a pivotal point. It really sort of made Iran look impotent, if you will, and took away a lot of their power and leverage. And so all of these other countries were like, huh, okay, maybe we can get on board with this. So that was pivotal. But so many of these Iran and their Hezbollah, all of their proxies have such a long game in mind. And as you said, maybe they reconstitute under another name, Hamas. Maybe they change the name and their eye on the long game, their eye on the prize has been in stone forever. It seems to me very difficult to break that. I'm not saying impossible, but it's what kind of effort is this going to require?
Well, it's a great question. And if you ask me right now, I think the Israelis, they were fighting on 7 fronts throughout this war for the last 2 years. When I look at where they are now, as opposed to where they were in the first month or two of this war, they have emerged the stronger party in every one of those fronts. So in other words, Iran looks a heck of a lot weaker, right? Hezbollah in Lebanon, a heck of a lot weaker. The Houthis, the Israelis took out half of their government in one bombing run. The West Bank had been in flames, looks a lot quieter right now. The Assad regime in Syria collapsed. No more threat from there. Iraq went eerily quiet. In other words, you look around right now and Israel looks like it's not just flexed its muscles or bared its teeth. It has beaten down every one of those that went after them. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not going to try to come back. It doesn't mean that they may try to reconstitute. We see efforts to that end repeatedly. But right now, if Israel plays its cards right, they're going to be able to keep these actors weaker than I've ever seen since I've been studying the conflict now for nearly 30 years.
Right. So one of the big questions is, do you now recognize a Palestinian state? And I saw Jake Sullivan, the former Secretary of State, on one of the Sunday shows over the weekend saying that has to be part of this solution. Does it have to be part of the solution?
I got to tell you, if you declared a state now, it would be a disaster for the region because I think it would be a failed state. Their government, it's run by a guy named Mahmoud Abbas. He's been in power since 2005. He's barely the mayor of Ramallah, the quasi capital of the West Bank Palestinian Authority. Deeply corrupt, can't control his own borders. And obviously you got Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other terror groups running around inside the territory that he purports to control. I don't see this as the right moment. I think if Abu Mazen leaves the scene, willingly or unwillingly, he's almost 90 years old, so I don't know how much time he's got left, but if he leaves the scene and you have a new leader that is committed to fighting corruption, that is committed to reform, maybe you start to see a different scenario. But, the fact that you had a bunch of European countries come out and say that they recognize the state of Palestine over the last couple of months, people were saying that's a huge deal. Here's what I keep trying to remind people. In 2012, there was a vote on behalf of the state of Palestine. There was a whole movement back then. And back then, there were 138 countries that recognized the state of Palestine. The other day, when they were taking numbers, it crept up to 145. Now, that's still a large number of countries that want to see a state at some point, but it's not like this is some groundswell of support. It was a handful of countries that got on board with the idea, but I got to say, it all hinges on whether they're ready. And right now, after 2 years of watching this war, I don't want to see another failed state come into being. I'd like to see some stability in the region first. It's something that we can work toward in the future.
And so that stability is achieved, it sounds like, through international forces being on the ground and making sure that this terrorist bent does not reemerge, that these forces do not reemerge. But in the meantime, what do the borders look like? Do the borders look the same? What happens along that strip?
So it's a great question. And actually, what I probably need to go back and explain is that in 2006, there was an election. It was contested. At the end of the day, the Gaza Strip fell under the control of Hamas through civil war. Hamas conquered the Gaza Strip by force, taking over this small territory, roughly the size of Washington, D.C., with about 2 million people in it. And then you have the West Bank, as it's known, or as the Israelis call it, Judea and Samaria. It's about 2.5, 3 million people. That remained under the control of the PLO. And so what you've had actually right now, people talk about a two-state solution. There are already 3 states. I mean, it's kind of a crazy thing, but because of this civil war that took place in 2007, it is sort of a dog's breakfast out there. So what you have right now is this need to bring Gaza under control. That's purging Hamas, getting rid of Hamas, establishing borders that can be secured by the Israelis and by some international force if and when it comes into being. And then you have the West Bank, which is the other part of this equation. It is so complicated right now. I don't expect there to be a state. We shouldn't be trying to declare a state overnight. We should be trying to just bring calm and security to the region in a very complicated map. And then after that, start to maybe move in the direction that you suggest.
Given all of what you just described and the variety and multitude of fronts that Israel has had to fight, right? It's astonishing to me that this little dot on the map, basically the size of New Jersey, I'm told, has done what it's done, has accomplished what is accomplished. Some of that, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, it's incredible. I mean, I've been traveling the Middle East for decades. It is tiny, and you see like at its waistband, it's like 14 miles from Palestinian areas to the ocean, and they have somehow just muscled their way through war after war. This one was exhausting for them. They usually fight lightning wars on other people's turf. This one was a war on their turf, and it lasted for 2 years. They somehow, with some help from the United States, without question, that war with Iran, but I mean, a lot of what they did is just incredibly, I mean, it's remarkable. And we're going to learn more and more about how they fought this war. AI was involved. New techniques that have never been wielded on a battlefield. We're going to start to learn more about those. And a lot of that really does stem from, they call it the startup nation, right? It's a country that has infused tech into everything that it does. They're an innovative culture. And I think that explains a lot of it, but also it's that toughness of the people. They had a whole generation of new fighters, people we weren't sure how they were going to do on the battlefield. In fact, a lot of people said, well, these are a bunch of, Gen Xers and maybe Gen Z, maybe even Gen Alpha. All they do is look at their phones all day. They've never had to fight. We don't know what they're going to be like on the battlefield. And wow, did they surprise everybody with the stamina and the fortitude.
Yeah, the IDF is remarkable. The whole situation is amazing. Before I let you go, I want to answer an age-old question, because I remember where I was on October 7th. Most people probably do. And I had immediate family around me. Unfortunately, we were at my mother's deathbed in her home, and this happened. And some family members said, well, Palestine keeps getting pushed out, and Israel keeps pushing them out. And I thought, this has so little to do with that and more to do, these are Iranian proxies attacking Israel. And I would just like you to give us the nutshell version of why Israel is where it is, and sort of like this notion that they are the bad guy all the time in pushing the Palestinians out of their region, or however people describe it. I think you get the gist of what I'm talking about. What is the answer that we can give to people who say this is all Israel's fault?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that is incredibly reductionist. Let me just say, this is an incredibly complicated conflict, one that I've been studying since the 1990s, and I'm still learning about it every day. And I think for people that come out and say, well, everybody knows the answer, or here's how to explain all of this in, an Emmy speech, or something else equally as short, it's insane. I mean, you really, if you're fighting for peace, if you're trying to understand how to get there, then you need to understand that Israel's been fighting its war of independence since 1948. It has been surrounded by enemies since its declaration of independence. It has had to fight off different iterations of enemies. Right now, the big one is Iran and all of its proxies. But before that, it was various terrorist groups. Before that, it was state actors around the region. This is not simple stuff. And the Israelis are tough. They've had to fight back. What they need is they need to see a region that respects their right to exist. The moment they do that, I think it all changes. And I have to say, I'm going to give full credit to Donald Trump right now because he is in Egypt talking about exactly that. He's trying to show the Arab world that, hey, we need to recognize Israel's right to live in peace and security. After that, I can tell you we're going to build back in a different way, and we may have a different reality. And so if you ask me right now, I'm watching for two countries that may be able to change the script here. One is Saudi Arabia. We've heard murmurs for years now that they may be interested in what they call normalization with Israel. That would be amazing because they are the custodians of the two holiest mosques in Islam, and it would be a heck of a message to everybody watching. The other one is Indonesia. This is the world's most populous Muslim country. They're not Arab, but apparently they are open to the idea of normalization as well. This is what we're hearing from the most recent reports. So I think this is how you change the script. But that script needs to be understood here that Israel has had a tough fight. The Arabs, the Palestinians, they've had a tough go too. Everybody needs to stop fighting and begin to think about a shared future. I'm hoping that this begins a different conversation today. What we saw in Israel, what we're seeing in Egypt, that is, I think, how we begin to build a different future.
And you've made me think of one more question I can't help but ask, because when you mention the name Trump, it elicits a lot of different emotions in a lot of different people. What I am looking at right now are facts, not emotions. The fact that these hostages have been brought home, the fact that there is a ceasefire in that region, and the fact that he is in Egypt with the heads of many, many other countries that you mentioned, pivotal players in all of this. Why was he able to do something that no other United States president was able to do?
I love that question. And I think what he does is he leans into strength. And look, I got to tell you, I'm not here to talk about his domestic policies. I'm not here to talk about, whether people are right to wear the red hats or not. That's not what we're talking about here. When we talk about foreign policy, the best thing that you can do is to support your friends and snarl at your enemies. Donald Trump did that. And I think he's made everybody think twice about attacking Israel. And in so doing, I think he's created a platform, a scaffolding, if you will, to move forward in the right direction. I don't see that too often. That's the kind of clarity that I think usually comes from a different kind of study of history. How he arrived there, I don't know. But I do know that everyone has taken note at the way that he spoke to the Israeli public today and how he is unafraid to be a friend of Israel. And that is a message to all of Israel's would-be enemies or actual enemies right now. It was a remarkable message today if you watch that speech.
It's most of what he does is unconventional. It's really been nothing short of remarkable. Does Netanyahu survive?
It's interesting. He's had a tough go. He was sitting atop the system when it collapsed back in October of 2023. So he's going to have a political fight on his hands. I will just say this. Never bet against Benjamin Netanyahu. This guy is unbelievable in his ability to work the international system and his own domestic political system. There's a reason why he has been the longest serving prime minister in Israel, and I wouldn't rule him out for one more run.
Jonathan Schanzer, it has been such a treat, a pleasure to talk to you on a day like today in particular, and I know how busy you are. I end every podcast, Jonathan, by saying be brave and do good. I think that just sits alone, and on a day like today, there's no need to explain it. Courage and do-gooding. It's just pretty simple. Thank you. I hope we can do it again. I enjoyed this thoroughly.
It'd be a pleasure.
Hey, you can keep up with the Trump administration when you subscribe to the Trump Report. It's an email that brings you daily highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Subscribe today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.